If you want to grow your sales, and who doesn't, you need to get involved with TMSA, Transportation Marketing and Sales Association. TMSA has been around for 100 years because it is a great place for transportation sales and marketing people to learn and grow. TMSA is holding an event called Elevate, and it is taking place June 9th, 10th, and 11th in New Orleans. I went to TMSA Elevate last year in Savannah, and it was fantastic. The leaders in our space are there, and they're sharing what's working for them. Please check the show notes for links to TMSA and TMSA Elevate, and I will see you in New Orleans. Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. On the Logistics of Logistics, I talk to experts in logistics and transportation, warehousing, fulfillment, supply chain, and of course, technology. And during these interviews, I'm always the one asking the dumb questions. I ask the dumb questions so you don't have to. Optimizing cold chain while reducing environmental impact with my friend Nicole Glenn. Nicole is the founder and CEO of both Candor Expedite and Candor Food Chain. Nicole and her team at Candor Food Chain have launched a new cold chain service with a unique technology, a fully reusable cold packaging solution that allows frozen and refrigerated shipments to go by regular transport and stay frozen or refrigerated for up to 9 days. This is a game changer for cold chain shippers. If you're interested in the cold chain, please take a listen. How's it going, Nicole?
Good. Hi, Joe.
So, Nicole, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
Sure. My name's Nicole Glenn. I am the CEO and founder of really the Candor portfolio of companies. Candor Expedite is what has been known in the marketplace, but we have been expanding and growing. So we'll be talking about some of these new companies that are being launched, but I'm located in Plano, Texas. And our initial company was started in 2017. So almost headed to our 7th birthday, I like to call it.
Very nice. Well, you've been on the podcast a few times. We'll make sure we put a link to those previous episodes. But I've known you for a number of years. I remember we worked when I'm still doing digital marketing. I remember working on your website early on. And I'm just so impressed with how far you've gone. And this has been during COVID. I know there was challenges, especially for anybody outside of transportation, but transportation did relatively well. But since then, since the last 2 years, it's been really tough. And you've still continued to grow, and not only just grow, innovate. And we'll talk about some of that innovation. I think our industry has a lot of innovation around digital stuff, which is great, very important. But you're doing something beyond digital innovation. I'm not saying you're not a digital innovator, but you're doing stuff beyond that. We'll talk about it in a minute. But first, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you started Candor Expedite.
Sure. I've been in the industry for 24 years now. So before that, I basically entered in the space when I was in high school, right after high school. But before that, I lived in Naperville, Illinois. That was where I did really junior high through high school. Loved it. Obviously have relocated down to Plano, Texas, but I got a family of 3 children, great parents, always around, very hard workers, showing us there was no sick days and you put in your time and you try to grow and climb in your career.
It's old school now.
Yeah, a little bit. And then I became a college student. I left college when I was, I think I was a year in, and I was doing my transportation job and killing it, making $12 an hour, and felt that I didn't need to go to school. But I did go back, and I graduated from an amazing university up in Michigan called Northwood University.
Yes, I went there too. My first year was at Northwood, and I still am very fond of that school.
Yeah, it's a great school. I got to go back last year. They actually acknowledged me as a distinguished woman. So I got to go see the campus and see some of the students.
Oh, I should have met you when you came to, it's probably 2 hours from my house. It's up in Midland, Michigan.
Yeah. Nowadays, just to switch gears, I am a mom of 3 kids. So I have twin boys who are 15, and I have a almost 19-year-old daughter. And I'm in a really good balance of life. This age of my kids has, I want to say, I can breathe a lot easier, which I know that will change. But right now, life's in a really good spot with having these teenagers.
Yes, my mother always says that once you have kids, you'll never sleep quite right. I was like, "Is that the truth?" But anyway, who do you guys work with? I know you started off as an expediting company, but I know you've grown way beyond that. So what industry verticals are you working with, and what services are you guys providing?
Sure. When we started, we were really focused on lifting the freight forwarding market. So we had quite a few clients that were able to touch all of their clients. So it was a great working relationship with quite a few of them, and we still do today. But we've pivoted. We've gone more direct towards manufacturers additionally. And so the focus really has been food and beverage. That's been my background, I think, since 2008 is really when I started servicing the food market. So we do a lot of work there. We do a lot of like telecom equipment, anything that's specialized with more of a time definite situation. A lot of white glove customers too. We are seeing server racks to ATM machines to lottery machines, slot machines. I can
Oh,
keep
wow.
going. But it seems like it keeps unfolding. We do a lot of aerospace, a lot of medical type of
The
deliveries.
bar is
And then we have
higher in all of those industries.
there are, but it's funny because really every industry touches what we do. I feel like you can even just say general manufacturing touches it because there's always a need for something to be either rushed in, rushed out, raw materials for production, keeping a machine going. So I really do think it touches every industry, some just more than others.
Yep. Now, do you guys have assets? Are you a asset light? What are you guys working with?
Right now, we one of our portfolio companies is called Candor Express. It was actually one of the reasons why I moved down to Texas pre-pandemic, and then that all happened, so everything got put on hold. But we did officially start up and launch that company. And this year, we are going to be getting vehicles, owner operators underneath that, building that out. But that's more on the courier side, Joe. So all of the businesses that we're developing are to support each one of those, because you and I have talked about staying in your lane and
Yeah.
staying in your
Yeah.
niche. So every business in that portfolio will lift and support another. So that courier side and that smaller equipment side is where that company will live.
Yep. Yep. So let's switch gears and talk a little bit about the name of the topic today: optimizing cold chain while reducing environmental impact. I'll just give my 2 cents real quick, and I know you have some stats to share. And so cold chain super important, but it's also difficult, and it's difficult because if you have a full truck, it's still difficult because you have to keep it the temperature controlled, right? And you have to have that chain of custody. And cold chain is normally going to be food. Or if it's not food, it's pharma. It's something that is being ingested. And nobody wants to take chances with that. But we've struggled with it for years. And it's an environmental nightmare in many cases to move this stuff. So I know you guys got some interesting solutions for this. Please elaborate.
During the pandemic, and even quite frankly before that, I would see a lot of customers that were in needs for maybe a box, a pallet, a couple of pallets, and they were stuck with either two modes of transportation. We do have the refrigerated street trucks and sprinters, but I like to call those one of the unicorns of the industry. They are more dedicated towards like private fleets and different things there, not widely used across the industry as a regular. So we are stuck with refrigerated LTL, or we are then going to the full truckload model, often not even utilizing a full truckload and shipping those materials that way. And I also understand that during the pandemic, capacity was very tight, but at the same time, it was one of those times where seeds were getting planted with there has to be a better way. So I did a bunch of research too and just started understanding how much of the sustainable need is for the cold chain, right? As well as how much things are wasted on a daily. As the American population is wasting about 92 billion pounds of food annually, which equals to about 145 billion meals. The number is staggering, Joe, right?
I know.
We
I
throw
know.
away $473 billion worth of food annually. So that's 38% of all food that's manufactured. And you could even go further into that stat to understand that even on the transportation side and on the manufacturing side, those stats aren't reported on how much is wasted and thrown away. So,
Yeah, the supply chain, that's just the tip of the iceberg in this, because that's what we consumers, that's our problem. Like from the time we bought it, or maybe the store threw it, I don't know what that number is, but all along the supply chain, we're throwing stuff out or it goes bad, and then we get it, and a lot of it's thrown out. And during the pandemic, I felt like a lot of times we got by produce, it was bad very quickly. So you're like, something's, this didn't get the right treatment. It didn't get here soon enough. And you're like, we were talking before we hit record, any berries that you bought, and berries are supposedly the healthiest fruit, but if you buy them fresh, they were going and expensive. And then you buy them and you're like, I'm not throwing these damn blueberries out. I'm like, I'm going to throw the bad ones out. I'm going to eat it like I'm in the depression.
yeah, and it's basically like you have to get it home and consume it, or even like avocados. Now there's a lot of deliveries to people's homes as well. And so when they're picking those products to give you, they're going with the oldest materials first. They need to get that off their shelves. So there's another layer of complication. I've tried to purchase avocados or even chicken. I've tried to buy chicken and utilized a delivery service, and it was expiring that day when I was doing my shopping for the week. So if you don't look at that, you can actually ingest that chicken, say you waited those 5, 6 days, and potentially get your family ill.
Yeah. And we're all trying to eat better, which means we're eating fresh fruit, produce, whatever, fresher meats. We're not interested as taking stuff out of a bag. Right? We're trying not to get the fast food stuff. We're trying not to get the processed food. So as we're trying to do that, it's difficult because the cold chain still struggles. And by the way, this is probably one of the best cold chains in the world. I know I've talked to people in other countries where they really struggle, especially developing countries where they're not able to keep it, not able to cool it properly and get it in. So when you think about the cold chain, it's not just moving it on a truck. When you think about, let's say, corn, when they're pulling that corn, it could be 90 degrees out and it has to be cooled down properly. And then it has to quickly be cooled down, because if it doesn't get cooled down, it's going to go bad much faster. So we have to cool it down before we even get it into our supply chain, or our transportation supply chain. And that's a big challenge, because we all want that fresh stuff, but it's not getting there quite right. So you guys have some interesting things you're doing. Please talk about how you can help. So I don't have that big overkill, because moving a full truck with 2 cartons of blank is not helpful. And also having stuff go bad because it got on LTL is not helpful. We need a better solution. Please talk about what you guys are doing.
Yeah, we need a sustainable solution. Like I said, during the pandemic, I would get requests because we are an expedited company first and foremost. So I would get a lot of requests, and I was fulfilling the truckload side of things. And so I talked to one of my fast food retail clients, and I'm like, hey, will you help me on this journey? I feel like there's a better solution that could impact every company. And we just have to work together and find it. What I've noticed on the cold chain side of things too is QAs are involved. There's a normal process and a normal way that the supply chain and the folks who are involved in that.
You mean quality assurance?
Yes. So to change and modify that with something radical is it's challenging unless you have the data to back it up, right? That you're bringing a different solution to the market. So, worked with a great fast food retailer. We tested all these different products. Nothing was holding up, Joe. Like we wrapped stuff, we kept going and nothing was holding up. So I started getting a little discouraged and I went, I don't know, we have to do something else. So ended up getting connected with some folks that were in Europe that were supporting the pharmaceutical industry. And the company had been in operation for about 12 years doing this. And it was astonishing at how they were able to keep temperatures regulated throughout a transit of a shipment across Europe globally. They were shipping products globally in different packaging solutions with no dry ice, no extra wasted materials. It was a completely sustainable solution. So I approached them originally just to buy some packaging and said this would be something great. And then I started listening to the success of this on the pharmaceutical side, which has higher stringency levels than food actually needs, the overkill concept that you said. So I went, this is working here. We have to build this for the food industry in the United States. So we worked with directly the manufacturer of the materials and we established a pallet. So when I say a pallet, it's a packaging solution that we place materials inside with no dry ice, really no anything except these beautiful refrigerated panels that can be interchanged out of these pallets, and it lasts in a pallet for 9 days with the ability of these panels to offer fresh and frozen solutions, even up to 70 degrees. So we can go from -10 degrees to 70 degrees and hold those temperatures for 9 days without any form of additional refrigeration. So, the packaging solution
So you mentioned no dry ice. Is dry ice a problem?
it is, think about it, it's all CO2. So, what does that do for the environment? There's ebbs and flows in the needs of it. So, there's summer months, there's dry ice shortages, prices are going up consistently, sometimes companies are out of stock. And so it's a reoccurring issue that happens. I've even had some customers not know how to handle it. And so we have a driver in a Sprinter van that's pulling over to the side of the road because he can't breathe in his vehicle.
Oh,
So it's all about how you package it because that's all CO2 coming out of those packages. So it's one of those things where it diminishes over time. So it makes the expedited process further. And then you can't really play around with the temperature of dry ice. It isn't like you can hit a button and go, I would like this one to hold at 0 degrees.
right.
You're getting that consistent frozen temperature to start and then that diminishing ability for the dry ice over time.
So it's not a good solution.
Yeah, and this solution, we have it in a box size to alleviate even small cartons all the way up to the pallet size. So there's multiple boxes and pallets that can be utilized all at different temperatures. And the technology part is, I think, one of the most important parts because even in America, how much we've passed different regulations with the food regulations that are out there, companies are still not managing the chain of custody properly when we're talking about food. So if you're shipping something reefer LTL, you don't know how many times that trailer's open. You don't know how when it gets on a dock, like what's going on. With this ability, there's temperature management per box per pallet. So we're able to at any time of the day or night peek in via online through our cloud and see, A, how is that temperature holding? We can send that information or even just have it through the portal. So if a customer has any questions, they're able to look at where it was within a 1 mile radius at any time, as well as what that temperature was. And if we start going out of range, we get notifications.
Right. Right. So you mentioned the chain of custody. So the Food Safety Modernization Act, or which is probably 7 years old, 8 years old now, they say you have to have this chain of custody. I always describe it as we've all watched the cop shows and how they treat evidence. It can't be, I cannot have it come out of our custody. And when you think about what we're doing, a lot of times we're taking it out of a warehouse and it sits on a dock. Chain of custody is keeping it away from pests, rats, or insects, right? It's also keeping away from crazy people who want to tamper
Yep.
with it. But we're also very interested in keeping it the right temperature. So just that one little action, we moved it out of our warehouse to our dock. And now think of all the things that potentially go wrong on that dock. Can somebody get it to it? Can insects get to it? Can it leave the temperature excursion? And then I put it into a truck. And if it's an LTL truck, as you said, maybe there's 10 stops before we take it off. Each one of those is a potential risk. And when we're talking about food, which we are, we just can't have risk. Any operations person's job is to remove risk from the job. And in that case, you just don't have full control.
And no flexibility with those either, Joe. It's like a reefer LTL line can go, say, twice a week on one lane. If your team misses production, something goes wrong. Now you've missed that reefer LTL line, and now we're talking about utilizing a tractor trailer for 2, 3, 4 pallets. So again, that waste concept it's massive, and there's just no flexibility for some shippers, especially shippers that are in remote markets, and they may have reefer LTL shipments going really all over the country, but they miss certain line hauls, and then they're not in a good way. And then one of the things you and I talked about when we were before recording was this concept of the bulkheads that live in this space. And so just to educate people on a bulkhead, there are professional and things that you can purchase that make that work. There are tri-temp trailers, but those again are not in most fleets today. And so we have what is called a makeshift bulkhead where people will make their own partitions and try to move the freight around depending upon where their refrigerated vent is blowing the cold air. So they will try to makeshift these partitions, and there's really no way to verify that something's gonna be, "Hey, this is at the back of the trailer, so this is gonna be super cold because that's where my vent is," or, "It's in the middle of the trailer, this is where my vent is." And so you're playing Russian roulette when you're talking about placement and some of these makeshift things. So we need solutions that, again, with that chain of custody, alleviate claims and then also protect companies' brands. We talk about some of these places. You go to Walmart to buy something and something goes wrong. I'm not looking at each individual packaging. I'm going to contact Walmart. If I go to a fast food retailer and I've gotten my tomatoes and they've made me sick on my fast food, I'm thinking of that brand. So that chain of custody is very important because it can impact your entire business. We've seen it with PR that comes out for some of these companies, and ultimately they might have just placed an order with their vendor and the vendor is the one that didn't handle this properly, and millions of people get sick or parts of countries get sick, and it's a problem.
Yeah, it is a huge problem. So let's get back to your solution. So can I describe this as a box? Am I putting my stuff inside a box and that box is refrigerated?
You are not. So basically how this works is there is patented panels that we have, and these panels can hold different temperatures. So I'm going to show up, my company is going to show up at a facility, a shipper's facility, and we are going to take that product. And since we have the white glove background as an expedited company, we are going to load all of those materials in those boxes or those pallets. We are basically gonna close that lid, and we are gonna transport it any mode of transportation. Now with this flexibility of time that we have, which is usually not the case with, say, dry ice or reefer LTL, we can play around with what the actual end customer needs. So it gives us now the ability to, move freight in every mode. We can air freight, we can LTL freight, we can um, use an exclusive straight truck for freight. It's endless options on what we're able to do. We can have local milk runs to make those multiple deliveries, and we basically make those deliveries. We drop the material off at the dock. We open it up. We take it out. and the consignee then has their materials. We then recover at that same time the packaging. We bring it back to our local warehouse. We clean and prep and get the panels cold again. So that way, that box, again, in the sustainable mission, is able to be reused over and over. So a shipper is technically renting our box and then getting the service to go alongside of it.
So when you say this can go all modes, so let's just say it goes from where you're at, Plano, up to Detroit, where I'm at. So would your driver have to take that, or could you give that to another driver and to do the unloading at my facility?
Since we're an air freight company, we have established relationships really all over the country for more of that white glove approach. So again, with that ability to make the pickup and then do a line haul and then have our agent relationship recover that from dock and then make that
Right.
delivery.
So it stays within your network.
It does, but the whole concept, as well as to really help clients with that chain of command and custody, right? So we have that tracking capability. We have the ability to see if a lid was open per pallet, per box. So
Right.
now even the idea of the chain of custody is more protected because we have the visibility on what's happening with that exact product at all times.
Yeah. And now you start to be able to say, we know when it got there, we know when it unloaded. And now we just have a whole nother set of metrics that, so if somebody says, I need it by Wednesday, and you say, you need it every day, every week by Wednesday, but I've never seen it open before Friday morning. Do we really need it? Could we consolidate? There's a whole bunch of, as soon as you have
Sure.
that data, you can start having a lot more interesting conversations, because I was collecting those KPIs isn't for the sake of collecting KPIs. It's for having new business insights and saying, hey, Nicole, could we do it this way? Because we aren't unloading it till Friday morning. And I always thought we were unloading it right when it got there.
It's so funny because being an expedited company and really servicing a niche has allowed us to have those types of consultative conversations with customers. I know this is going to sound funny when I say it, but I feel like my job is to help my customers not have expedited shipments so they understand how things are happening. So when you have that type of dialogue and your customer becomes your true partner, you're able then to ask for those types of insights that they have and then really pull back the layers and understand what's happening in their supply chain. And then what other crafty and creative solutions can you cultivate to solve their issues? And so that's even how the birth of this company came to life, right? Is clients going, I have a need. Here's my data. How do we approach this? How do we create safety around it? And you can tweak and pivot because that's what we've always done. Our main foundation business has been to peak and pivot, tweak and pivot around our customers' needs. It's just created a great platform for the idea of can we create a pop-up shop for somebody, say, in Central Florida and do this locally? It's every mode of transportation. Could we let our customers hold on dock longer and build these bigger trucks and then tailor that equipment size to that shipment? So when I say every mode, you can get so crafty with your routing. You can even deploy a line haul truck from Chicago, get everything to, say, Reno, Nevada, and then disperse again to the whole West Coast. So it allows you to be nimble with your solutions to reduce their cost, to bring more sustainability to what they're trying to accomplish by not utilizing refrigerated trucks. Another great point too is that we get these pallets and panels conditioned all in electric. So what we focus on is really trying to eliminate any sort of fuel. Yes, we do have it along our line haul at this point in time. We're all trying to work together to start solving those problems as well. So can you imagine if we have these beautiful electric trucks, we're chilling our products with electric, we're able to maintain that throughout transit. We got to focus on that, but I think the biggest focus is really protecting companies' brands, creating flexibility in their supply chain, making sure that things are happening the way that they're supposed to from start to finish. And let's start eliminating this waste that we see for sure.
Yeah. So now when we talk about this, the cold chain, the first and foremost, we need to be effective, which means get the desired result, which means it doesn't warm up. We get that they're on time. But next, we need to be efficient, right? We need to use the minimum amount of resources possible to get that desired result. What you described, I love it. But I can envision somebody listening to this right now saying, yeah, but how much does it cost? Because if it costs a lot more, we're not doing it. If it costs, yeah, I'm just making this up right now. If it costs 30 cents more, I can see somebody saying, nope, we're not doing it. 30 cents more is going to kill our business. So please talk about the economics of what you guys are doing.
Again, with the building out and the consolidation concept, it can be a cost savings for companies. And obviously, as the service offering grows more and more into different territories and the cost will keep going down. But right now, we're focused more on bringing it to market, understanding a customer's need, and then doing all that we can to shoot under that threshold. We've had some clients too that have straight up said, because we've tested these products already in the United States many times on the box side as well as the pallets. And some of them have said with their goals, they're fine with the same cost, if not slightly
Oh, yeah,
higher,
of
because
course.
now they're alleviating any issue of claims. So we were doing some air freight shipments for a pretty big, one of the biggest fast food retailers. And they were saying, even if we were X amount over per that shipment, they had so many shipments in the past that were wrapped in dry ice that they literally would have to throw them out and start over. And so when you start looking at your full supply chain and not just a shipment by shipment scenario on what your average rate is, that cost savings is there. And if you are sending out a tractor trailer for one pallet, one box, I don't even have to tell you the math there. If you're tailoring the dry equipment to your shipment, again, it's a rental for the box or pallet, and it is not very expensive. It's a per shipment cost. So it's definitely doable for everyone that we've presented to so far.
Yeah. And Nicole, we know we talked the other day about this. You said there are cartons that are being delivered by a full truck to a retail location. And so you go, it's here. You go, oh, there's a big truck. Get everyone, let's get everybody over here so we can unload it. And you open it up. There it is, a carton. And you go, I used a full truck.
Yeah, I've seen that on the pharma side here. I used to have a customer up in Chicago, and we always, it's part of our procedure at Candor, is to take photos of the freight, the truck, the freight, once we make the delivery. And so we go to the airline to recover in this tractor trailer. We had to follow the entire process. It's pharma. And then I get the picture of the freight, and it's this tiny little box, Joe, in a tractor trailer. So I have to call the driver and say, hey, we need to secure that box. You're gonna have to figure out a way to secure that box to a pallet or something, because that's gonna roll all over your trailer and be damaged, right? So it happens, and it's mind-boggling. I've had a case of ribs that needed to go to a restaurant, a box of burgers. When you are a burger fast food restaurant, you have to have burgers, several cases. So it's just one of those things that when you have no solutions and it has to get to your facility, you do what you do. And so I don't blame the shippers for looking for that resource, because there's just not a lot of options today. So this solves that.
Yep. I love what you're doing. And while we're prepping, we had this conversation about truckload. We know where truckload belongs. Truckload has a lane. We're all familiar with it. And we know what LTL does. And it has a lane. And we're all very familiar with LTL. But between those two boulders is another potential lane. And we're starting to see companies like yours who are coming at this from the last mile, from expediting and saying, hey, we can take some of the stuff that LTL doesn't do very well, like two pallets or one pallet that needs to be refrigerated. It's not right up the alley of most LTL. I've tried to move stuff via LTL that needed to stay temperature controlled. Most of them don't have a lot. I haven't done it in a while, but most of those companies don't have a lot of refrigerated fleets or trucks in their fleets. Then the challenge also is if there's multiple stops, again, chain of custody. Also, if it's a hot day in Chicago and somebody says, yeah, you're the 10th stop, that means the truck opened up 9 times before mine. And it's not real controllable. You say, yeah, when you open that door, open it really quickly, unload it real quickly, and make sure no one goes in it. Well, all it takes is one time for it not to go right. It's the variability in that process.
We see grocery warehouses take a long time to unload, right? We know that. Everybody knows that. And so driver's going to open the doors, back up, get back in their space, and then they have to wait for someone to check them in. And then they have to wait, even if that's a cold facility, not frozen, that is still changing the integrity of the temperature. And again, there's just so many moving parts. There's humans involved with so much where things can go wrong. And it literally can be fish, anything that people ingest that creates a problem.
Yeah, and I just love it that let's use the smallest, most efficient vehicle possible to move this. Maybe it's a van that's moving that carton rather than a 53-foot truck that you had available that's a reefer. Yeah, so it makes a lot of sense. And I think this is the first time I've talked to anyone about this. It seems to me that the nature of all commerce is it gets better and less expensive, and then we start to develop a supply chain around that. So I love that you started the process. I don't know if anyone else is doing anything like this right now.
Not that I'm aware of on the food side. I know that I talk to quite a few companies and they just don't see the benefit of the food side because they'll go, if you're shipping cans of corns, it doesn't pay. But again, I've worked in the food side for so long and I always focus to understand my customer's business. I see the gaps, I see the holes. I've seen that in regard to even working with trucking companies. I hear all of these stories. And so I feel like there is a better way and we can make it affordable and we can make it sustainable. And I love the idea of pioneering that.
You're good at it.
Yeah, it's one of those things though, you and I have talked about it for a long time is educating people on their options. I feel like again, the more open we are as a community on the solutions and even the problems, because everybody wants to say that they're operating the best. Every company has issues. And so if your partners are there, they're there to solve those. So once we open up, we talk through these things and we understand where people are at, you can then supply those solutions for them and get things changing. Just takes time in relationships.
This is a great solution. I love what you guys are doing. So I'm going to summarize the best I can, and then I want to get your final thoughts on it. But I don't want to lose you yet because I want to talk about some of the other things you're doing. So again, I'm talking to my friend Nicole Glenn, and we're talking about optimizing cold chain while reducing environmental impact. And before we hit record, we were talking about titles, and one of the thoughts I had was cold chain overkill, because we have sometimes overkill with cold chain where we're like, I got one pallet, I'll move it in this reefer that's 53 foot because that's all I have. Horrible waste of that truck and spending too much on fuel and cooling a whole tractor or trailer. Makes no sense. So extra trucks on the road. But the challenge is I have to keep this stuff cold. And then LTL isn't always the right solution either, because again, it's not controllable. That every LTL shipment or trailer is different. And there's not too many refrigerated reefers. And right now, I think we're at 9 LTL companies that have 85, 90% of the market. They don't really have to flex to do every last little project for you. It's just they have their lane and they do really well at it. I see a third lane right in between truckload and LTL developing, and it's really an alternative to LTL in some cases, because LTL can't do the same thing that a Sprinter van can do. It can't do the same thing that that you're describing with a solution that is more akin to a white glove experience. But again, I think there's a lot of food companies that are clamoring for a better solution. I know because I talk to them. It is challenging. So you guys have got a cool solution, and I love what you guys are doing. Put a big old bow on this one, Nicole. Final thoughts.
I am very excited to step into this new endeavor and really build this out. I think it's going to be game changer for a lot of companies. I think they'll be very happy with the concept of the solution. And I love the idea that we have the ability to keep customizing it and changing it too on the packaging side. So I think there's some additional good stuff to come on this in the future.
Nicole, I know we didn't prep and talk about all these things, but I know I've always been super impressed with how much you get done. I know you're part of a Vistage group, and I think you're still doing the ladies leadership. I just renamed it for you, Ladies
Yeah.
Leadership Coalition. And then you told me, I think last time we talked, you said, "Oh, I do 10 networking meetings a month." And I was like, "Damn, does she have 12 days a week that she's working with?" So
It
please
feels
talk
like it.
about some of these other things you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. I do run a podcast called LLC Ladies Leadership Coalition. And the whole concept of that is to bring either our panelist on. So it's 5 business owners that are in the transportation logistics space. And we talk about what's going on in the industry from our viewpoints. We all service different sectors, but then we try to give that business advice to people that are trying to either grow in their careers or understand different things that we've gone through. And then we bring on some great guests that tell their stories. So we want to inspire our audience to understand you are not alone, you are not stuck. Here are some of the things that other people have done that if you can just pick out one thing that you hear and apply to your life could really improve where you're headed for your career and your future. And so we've been doing that for the past 3 years. I love it. It has allowed me to get some great insight from other women. And it's also helped me continually want to be hungry to grow my business. And so it's been a give and a take from doing that. But yeah, I do.
That is also so I know Blythe is part of that, Blythe
Yeah.
Broomleaf and Sarah.
No, not Sarah.
Okay, Blythe.
Yep. So Blythe, Charlie Shafro, who's from CS
Okay.
Recruiting. We have Christy Knitchell from Knitchell
Yep.
Logistics. We have Sharon Sire from Talon Freight. We have Blythe. We have myself.
Okay.
We also have Liz Wayne, and she is the CEO and owner of Able Transport. So they do all specialty flatbed. So it's really cool that we're all in these different segments. So we love to throw out the industry updates too, just to say, hey, what's happening from our side of the world?
Yeah, yeah. It's a great I've listened in the past and I love what you're doing. If you send me a link, I'll put it in the show notes. So you're also doing Vistage. Are you still doing all those networking calls every month?
I do. I'm a early morning person lately. I've been getting my workouts in at 5:30, 6 o'clock and try to focus on health and then get here, do the day, and do all these things. But I have an awesome team. So I have a great team here that supports me. If I didn't, there's no way I'd be working in the business instead of on the business.
That is always the challenge. I catch myself most of the time I'm working in the business, but I'm trying to drag myself out of it. And by the way, the advantage of the podcast, and you probably the same thing, is you learn from other people when you're doing a podcast. And it's funny when I hear people like you talk in the podcast, how they're developing their business and how you, your business can only grow as quickly as you grow. And you know that, and you've done that. So not everybody is doing that. And I'll throw myself in that everybody category. You have to grow. You have to say, this is what's next for me. Because what you got you to the first level might not get you to the next level.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I love what you're doing. Of course, I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your website, and any other links you give me, like the LLC. I'll put all those in the show notes.
Yeah, and take a look on our website too for we're gonna have the launch here of Candor Food Chain. So we said the portfolio companies, we have Candor Expedite, We have Candor Food Chain. We have Candor Express.
Oh my goodness.
So all of these new entities alongside of our mothership of Candor Expedite that's led the way in this industry.
So what conferences will we see you and the fine folks from Candor Expedite at? I saw you at Manifest. We talked at Manifest. Where will I see you next?
I am still developing that next list. I am attending to go to CSCMP. So I go to DATCon,
When is that?
and I think it's October.
Yep. And then DATCon is, I think, in October also, right?
Yeah.
And where is that? I know I'm going to DATCon this year. I don't know where it's at.
DATCon was in Houston last year, but I don't know where it will be. They're talking about moving it.
I want to say Kansas City, somewhere like that. I will put DATCon in the show notes too, because I know I will be there. I'm looking, and that's for DAT, they're the data company, and they've done so much for our industry. If you don't have DAT, you need to consider it. Anyway, enough of my blather. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast, Nicole. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you, Joe.
And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.